Listen closely. Most people speak endlessly toward the sky, yet hear nothing in return. They raise their voice, repeat the same requests, and wonder why silence answers back. This is not because the divine is distant, it is because the approach is incomplete. For centuries, Shaolin teachings preserved a quieter truth. Communication with God begins not through speech, but through inner stillness. This video reveals the hidden shift that changes prayer from noise into connection. In this teaching, you will learn why speaking endlessly creates distance, while listening creates presence. You will understand the difference between a monologue driven by desire and a dialogue guided by awareness. In ancient Shaolin practice, truth was never chased outward. It was received inward through discipline, calm breath, and an undisturbed mind. The divine responds not to volume, emotion, or repetition, but to clarity and readiness. Many never realize this. Silence was always considered the first prayer. When the mind settles, perception sharpens. Guidance arrives quietly, often through subtle shifts in understanding, not dramatic signs. This knowledge was guarded in temples, passed from master to disciple, because an untrained mind would mistake inner noise for guidance. Here, that distinction becomes clear. Stay until the end, because this lesson moves beyond belief. It enters practice. You will learn how to prepare yourself so guidance can reach you without effort. This is not about asking for more. It is about removing interference. When that happens, communication becomes natural, steady, and undeniable. Welcome to Shaolin Divine Flow, a place where ancient wisdom meets modern discipline. Subscribe to the channel and walk this path with awareness, patience, and depth. Stillness reveals what noise hides. In Shaolin practice, silence is never treated as absence. It is treated as presence sharpened. When I first trained in the temple, silence was not a break between teachings. It was the teaching itself. We did not rush to fill the space with questions or explanations. We learned to remain inside the quiet long enough for understanding to surface on its own. The mind is like a restless lake. When stirred constantly, it reflects nothing clearly. Thoughts ripple after thoughts, opinions collide, emotions demand attention. In this state, people speak endlessly toward the divine, yet they are speaking over the answer. Shaolin wisdom teaches that before guidance can arrive, the inner noise must settle. Silence is the act of clearing the path. This silence is not forced. It is cultivated through awareness. When the body is still, the breath slows. When the breath slows, the mind begins to soften. In that softness, the ego loses its urgency to comment, judge, and control. The ego always wants to speak first. It interrupts with fear, desire, and expectation. As long as it dominates, true communication cannot begin. In the temple, masters rarely answered questions immediately. They would allow silence to stretch, sometimes uncomfortably. That discomfort revealed attachment. The need for quick answers was often the real obstacle. When patience replaced urgency, insight appeared without being summoned. This is how the divine communicates, not through loud instruction, but through quiet recognition. Silence trains discernment. It teaches the difference between impulse and intuition. When the ego steps aside, awareness expands. Guidance does not arrive as a voice from the outside. It arrives as clarity within action, restraint, and timing. One learns when to move and when to wait. This is why silence is considered sacred, not because it is empty, but because it is honest. In silence, nothing can be hidden. And when nothing is hidden, truth has space to speak. Before the mind can listen, the body must become ready. In Shaolin tradition, the body is not treated as a separate vessel that merely carries thought. It is the doorway through which awareness enters. Every posture, every movement, every breath either opens that doorway or quietly closes it. This is why physical discipline was never about strength alone. It was about clarity. A restless body creates a restless mind. When the shoulders are tense, the breath becomes shallow. When the breath is shallow, attention scatters. In this state, people search for guidance while their own nervous system is signaling alarm. Ancient practitioners understood this deeply. They did not sit to seek wisdom until the body was settled. Stillness was not symbolic. It was functional, Posture was considered a form of respect. A collapsed spine reflected a collapsed attention. An upright but relaxed posture signaled readiness, not effort, readiness. When the body is aligned, the mind follows naturally. Breath then becomes steady, unforced, and rhythmic. In this rhythm, the internal world begins to organize itself. Grounded presence was trained through repetition. Standing, sitting, walking, each done with full awareness. These were not exercises in patience alone. They were lessons in communication. When the feet feel the ground, the mind stops drifting. When weight is balanced, thoughts lose their urgency. The body becomes a stable foundation, and from stability comes receptivity. Discipline was the key that transformed the body into a temple. Not harsh control, but consistent care. Rising at the same hour, moving with intention, breathing without resistance. Over time, the body learned safety, and when the body felt safe, the mind could listen without defense. In this prepared state, guidance does not need to break through tension. It arrives quietly, like a reflection appearing on calm water. The body holds the silence, the mind receives it, and communication becomes effortless, because the space for it has already been built. Breath moves where thought cannot. Long before words were used to seek meaning, breath was used to feel it. In ancient traditions, breathing was understood as the meeting point between what happens without effort and what can be guided with intention. It arrives on its own, yet responds instantly to awareness. This made it sacred. It was the quiet bridge between the inner world and the greater order beyond it. When the breath is rushed, the mind follows. When it is shallow, perception narrows. Many search for answers while breathing as if they are being chased. The body remains in defense, and clarity stays out of reach. Shaolin teachings observed this without theory. They tested it through stillness, movement, and time. Slow breathing softened the nervous system. Softened nerves allowed attention to settle, and in that settled state, understanding arose naturally. Conscious breathing was never treated as technique alone. It was a form of listening. Each inhale invited presence. Each exhale released resistance. Over time, breath became a signal of alignment. When it flowed smoothly, action followed smoothly. When it was disturbed, something within required adjustment. In this way, breath became a teacher before it became a tool. Ancient practitioners used breath to step out of reaction. Instead of responding immediately to emotion, they returned to the rhythm of inhaling and releasing. This pause created space. In that space, impulse lost its grip. What remained was choice, and choice is where mastery begins. The divine was not approached through strain, it was approached through harmony. Slow, steady breathing brought the body into coherence. The heart rate settled, the mind widened. Awareness expanded without force. This state was considered receptive, not passive, alert yet calm. Through breath, the unseen becomes tangible. It does not announce itself. It becomes felt as clarity, timing, and inner steadiness. Breath carries no belief, no language, no demand, yet it connects what is human with what is higher. Moment by moment, without effort or noise. True asking carries no tension. In many traditions, people approach the divine with clenched hands. Their words are filled with urgency, expectation, and frustration. Requests become demands disguised as prayer. Complaints are offered as honesty. Yet beneath all of this is attachment, the need for a specific outcome to arrive in a specific form. Shaolin philosophy observed that this posture closes the very door one hopes to open. Asking without demanding begins with humility, not weakness but accuracy. It is the recognition that limited perception cannot see the full design. When one approaches with openness instead of insistence, the conversation changes. There is space for guidance rather than resistance. In this space, listening becomes as important as speaking. Ancient practitioners were trained to notice the weight behind their questions. A heavy question revealed grasping. A light question revealed readiness. When the heart is attached, the mind narrows. It filters every response through desire and fear. Wisdom may arrive, but it goes unrecognized because it does not match expectation. Surrender was never taught as giving up action. It was taught as releasing control over results. Effort remained disciplined. Practice remained consistent. Only the demand was removed. This shift allowed life to respond freely, without being forced into a predetermined shape. In this state, even challenges were received as instruction rather than punishment. To ask with openness is to trust timing. It is to accept that the answer may come through delay, redirection, or silence. Shaolin training emphasized patience because impatience blinds perception. When one stops pulling at the future, the present begins to speak. Complaining seeks relief. Asking seeks alignment. One drains energy, the other refines it. When the request is made without clinging, the body relaxes, the breath steadies, and awareness expands. The question is released into stillness, where it can be met fully. In surrender, wisdom finds room to arrive. Not loudly, not dramatically, but precisely in the way that supports growth rather than comfort. Clarity is not accidental. In ancient training, discipline was never imposed as punishment. It was offered as protection. Without structure, the mind scatters. Without rhythm, attention weakens. Shaolin teachings understood that guidance is subtle by nature. It does not compete with chaos. It waits for alignment. Personal mastery was defined by consistency, not intensity. Rising at the same hour, practicing the same movements, returning to the same stillness each day. These repetitions were not meant to impress. They were meant to clear. Each disciplined action removed a layer of internal noise, unnecessary thought, restless emotion, unfocused desire. Over time, the inner space became quieter, more ordered. Control tightens. Alignment settles. Control forces behavior through pressure. Alignment allows behavior to follow clarity. When life is disciplined, decisions become simpler. Energy stops leaking into distraction. Attention remains where it is needed. This stability creates a channel through which insight can pass without distortion. A chaotic life demands constant reaction. Every interruption pulls awareness outward. In such a state, even strong guidance becomes difficult to hear. It is like trying to hear a whisper in a crowded room. The whisper has not changed. The noise has increased. Discipline lowers the volume of the room. Ancient practitioners treated daily habits as sacred agreements. Eating with awareness, speaking with restraint, moving with intention. These were not moral rules. They were tuning practices. Each habit refined perception, bringing the inner system into coherence. When thoughts, emotions, and actions aligned, the mind became receptive. Discipline also trained patience. Guidance rarely arrives on demand. It appears when the mind is ready to receive it without distortion. A disciplined life creates readiness by removing excess, less confusion, less impulse, less resistance. In this state, insight does not feel distant or mysterious. It feels natural, like something that was always present finally heard because the channel has been cleared. Life speaks before words ever form. In Shaolin tradition, the sacred and the everyday were never divided. Every action, every challenge, every encounter carried instruction. The masters observed closely. The divine rarely communicates through loud proclamation. It communicates through the world itself, through patterns that repeat until understanding awakens. Resistance, difficulty, and recurring lessons are not obstacles. They are messages. When one approaches life with awareness, ordinary events begin to reveal themselves as guidance. A delay, a disagreement, a mistake, each becomes a mirror. Each moment shows what is hidden within the mind, attachment, fear, or impatience. The lessons are never abstract. They are practical, rooted in experience. Shaolin wisdom teaches that insight gained only from thought is shallow. True understanding is embodied, tested, and felt in reality. Patterns repeat until they are recognized. A choice ignored once will return. A truth avoided will reappear in a different form. Life becomes the teacher that cannot be bypassed. Those who attempt to negotiate with words alone through prayer, pleading, or argument often miss the subtle guidance already present. Words can clarify intention, but they do not replace the lived lesson. Conscious living transforms perception. Actions become the medium through which communication flows. a patient response, a disciplined practice, a moment of stillness. These are the forms through which the divine speaks. Shaolin masters understood that mastery is not in asking more from life, but in listening and responding with clarity and integrity. Reality is never separate from guidance. It does not need translation. It does not need ceremony. When the mind is quiet and disciplined, every experience, every pattern, every encounter becomes a living answer. The world itself becomes the message, and the student becomes capable of reading it without distortion. The heart can cloud what the mind seeks to see. In Shaolin practice, emotions were never suppressed but understood. Anger, fear, desire. They are natural currents of the mind, yet left unchecked, they warp perception. The untrained heart reacts instantly, pulling attention outward, chasing impulses, and creating stories that mask reality. True insight cannot travel through such turbulence. Training begins with observation. Practitioners learn to witness emotions as a teacher would observe a student, not to judge, not to control, but to understand. A rising anger is noted, its origin traced. A swelling fear is acknowledged, its lesson examined. This observation without reaction is the first step toward mastery. By allowing emotions to exist without interference, the mind becomes still enough to see clearly. Repeated practice transforms awareness into instinct. When the body and breath are steady, when posture is aligned, the mind learns to step back from emotional currents. One begins to recognize the difference between impulse and intuition, between fleeting sensation and enduring truth. Emotional turbulence no longer dictates choice. It becomes data, a reflection of inner patterns, not a call to action. Shaolin philosophy views this mastery as a form of spiritual maturity. A mind unshaken by every disturbance can hear subtle guidance, respond with clarity, and act in alignment with deeper purpose. Decisions made in the shadow of unchecked emotion are distorted. Decisions made from balanced awareness are precise. Through patience, repetition, and self-discipline, emotional mastery becomes a natural state. Anger does not vanish, it is simply understood. Fear does not disappear, it is acknowledged without surrender. In this balance, intuition emerges unclouded. It becomes a quiet, trustworthy guide, revealing truths that the restless mind could never perceive. Emotional mastery is not restraint, it is freedom. Freedom to perceive reality as it is, to act from clarity, and to engage with life without distortion. It is the foundation upon which true spiritual maturity is built. The direction of a question often shapes the answer before it arrives. In Shaolin teachings, intention was regarded as the silent architect of perception. Two students might sit in the same meditation, witness the same phenomenon, and yet one perceives insight while the other perceives confusion. The difference is subtle but decisive, the quality of intention. What the heart truly seeks filters every experience, every pattern, every whisper of guidance. When intention is rooted in ego, desire, control, recognition, the mind interprets everything through distortion. Signs become coincidences, lessons become frustrations, and guidance feels contradictory. The more insistently the ego pushes, the louder the internal noise grows, drowning subtle wisdom beneath urgent demands. This is why Shaolin masters emphasized awareness of motivation before seeking answers. Without clarity of intention, even profound teachings remain veiled. Conversely, intention grounded in growth, humility, and alignment opens perception. When the heart seeks understanding rather than confirmation, insight becomes unmistakable. Patterns reveal themselves naturally. Lessons arrive repeatedly until they are integrated. The mind no longer demands drama or immediate proof. Instead, it discerns subtle shifts in reality, recognizing guidance as it manifests in everyday life. Intention also refines patience. Growth does not follow impatience. It emerges quietly in the spaces between effort and surrender. By refining intention, the student aligns action with awareness, creating conditions in which life itself becomes a teacher. Each challenge, each decision, each encounter becomes an opportunity to test alignment rather than to prove ego. In this way, intention does not merely color perception, it shapes the conversation itself. It determines whether questions are met with clarity or confusion, whether guidance flows freely or remains obscured. When intention seeks growth, every interaction with the divine and with life itself becomes a dialogue rather than a struggle. This is the subtle power of mindful intention. It opens the path for communication that is true, direct, and transformative. Peace is not found by searching. It is revealed when the seeker becomes still. In Shaolin tradition, the highest form of communication with the divine was never effortful. It was not a matter of asking more, seeking louder, or waiting anxiously for signs. It was a matter of becoming the quiet space in which clarity naturally arises. The masters understood that the divine does not enter a mind crowded with desire, resistance, or distraction. It flows effortlessly into presence. This quiet place is cultivated not through external ritual, but through inner alignment. Daily practice, disciplined attention to breath, posture, and awareness slowly transforms the inner environment. Repetition is not mere habit, it is the shaping of a mind capable of stillness. As restlessness fades, patience grows. As tension dissolves, perception sharpens. In this state, the need to seek is replaced by the capacity to notice. Clarity becomes a living quality rather than a momentary insight. When identity and presence merge, guidance does not feel external. It is not a signal to be interpreted. It is a resonance already known within. Questions cease because the mind itself reflects the answer. Life itself becomes the manifestation of understanding, and every moment carries its own instruction. In this highest practice, the sacred is no longer a destination. One does not visit it or pray to access it. It is the ground upon which one walks, the awareness that shapes every thought and action. Effort transforms into effortless presence. Listening replaces asking. Understanding replaces seeking. To become the quiet place is to embody clarity. It is to live aligned with the principles that govern inner mastery. In this state, communication with the divine is not occasional or external. It is constant, it is seamless. It is the natural unfolding of a mind and body trained to reflect the stillness where truth always resides. In the end, talking with God is not measured by words or volume. It is measured by stillness, by the space we create within ourselves to truly hear. Shaolin wisdom reminds us that discipline, awareness, and silent presence are the keys that open this channel. When the mind is calm, the body grounded, and intention sincere, guidance no longer needs to be sought. It flows naturally through every action and moment of life. Carry this practice into your daily life. Pause, breathe, observe without attachment. Let your actions reflect clarity rather than urgency, and notice how the subtle guidance of life begins to reveal itself in unexpected ways. Thank you for walking this path with us. If you found value in this teaching, subscribe to Shaolin Divine Flow and join a community dedicated to inner mastery, mindfulness, and ancient wisdom. May stillness guide your steps, and may each moment bring you closer to the quiet place where true understanding arises.